Hi, Josh. It's Debbie. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hello. Here I am.
There you are. Hi, Daniel.
Hello.
I am so excited to have both of you on the phone today. I just want you to know that.
Oh, awesome. We're excited to be here. We appreciate it.
I love Sick and Twisted. Oh, this is delightfully sick and twisted.
Oh, thank you.
I'm watching this and watching this, and I'm watching this relationship between Dom and Miles. Josh, it's kind of a befuddled bewilderment to Dom. It's like, yeah, no, Northern Banshee, oh, Bigfoot, Nessie, I saw the signs, and Jersey Devil, and the Chupacabra, and it's like, oh my God, it's like your mind is all over the place. You were like...
Yes, there is definitely a little bit, maybe a lot of bit of me in there. The antsiness of that character. I didn't have to go too far.
I just love that it's carried through into your quote-unquote production design and set dress with, on the bulletin boards and the walls and things like that. But then you get paired with Keith as Miles. Perfect nerd pairing. Perfect. And I'm watching, it's like, okay, clearly the one with the common sense is Miles. Dom just leaps in head first, which makes it really easy for Doug Greywood to really feed into that. And the whole integration of the characters and this story works so well, guys.
Thank you.
Daniel, I got news for you. I didn't know what to expect when Doug showed up on screen. It's like, oh, it's Mr. Greywood. And it's, here's this nice, respectable-looking guy. Okay, he's just got this weird cabin in the woods. So immediately you flash to a Joss Whedon kind of script of Cabin in the Woods.
Sure.
And then you realize, okay, it's a really creepy cabin in the woods, and it's falling apart, and... yeah, and the woods are looking really barren, shall we say. People who have a house or even a cabin on a big plot of land, you get far enough away from people, and it's kind of barren. Daniel, when Doug shows up, he looks so respectable, maybe a little weird, holding a flower in his hand. And then things start to get really interesting. It really becomes this great triumvirate of interaction between Dom and Greywood and Miles. And watching these dynamics unfold and really getting to see the personalities come out. So by the time we hit the 49-minute mark of this film, oh man, I'm like ready to like go through the screen. It is so damn good.
Thank you so much.
Obviously, Sick and Twisted Minds can create something like this. Where did the...
It takes a little bit of wanting to... it takes two minds that want to shock each other a little bit. And so I think a lot of it was Daniel and I both kind of trying to shock each other while we wrote it and figure out what's something twisted and funny and weird and going to shock the audience that we can do.
You have so much fun stuff in there. A lot of the first half of the film, there's a lot of humor in there. Mm-hmm. With Miles's obsession with his collectible Game Boy and this is the big crisis for everyone, is Miles no longer has his collectible Game Boy. Collectors everywhere are just their hearts are going to bleed, and they will cry for poor Miles and his collectible Game Boy. So you get all this humor, and you get humor with the pairing of Dom and Miles, and Keith brings such great lack of facial expressiveness, shall we say, to a lot of what Dom does. Yeah. But then it just flies. You hit that 49-minute mark and you guys just go off the rails. And I just couldn't get enough of it. So you come up with this twisty idea. How do you even plot this out? Especially, yeah, I get the camping in the woods and scared shitless, and Dom doesn't bother tying his shoelaces on his boots. We're littering the woods with alcohol bottles. Typical, like, frat boy kind of stuff almost. And you can tell that Dom and Miles were never frat boys. So this is kind of, they're making up for it. How do you even plot this out, though, to get to that 49-minute mark with the big reveal, the first of quite a few big reveals, and then just dive right in and break this out with the minutia, the cinematography, which is just, I'm so impressed with, guys.
Thank you.
The minutia that you just bring into play, the use of extreme close-ups, your ECUs are fabulous as we see Greywood's true nature emerge. Talk to me about how you broke this out so it could be something on the page that, Josh, you could then bring to life on film, on video.
Yeah, so it really started as this project that I kind of always wanted to do, where I really wanted Daniel to play a mad scientist and something. And then from there, I live and die by the 40-card rule. I lay out my note cards and I break it down into 3 acts, and I start writing scenes, and I start breaking down, like, why are we seeing all of these things? Why does this scene need to exist? And so, I had the first card that was like, Daniel turns me into a monster. Like, that was like a big key element of this whole process. And so just that simple concept, it obviously changed and like melded from that. But I just started writing out my 40 cards and what I wanted, what scenes I wanted to do. And then from there, we went out and actually tried filming sort of an improv version of this. And then when we came back to it, I was like, okay, let's try to write a script now off of what we have and figure out where this movie's going to go. And then it's sort of like just adapted, and I wrote the bones and like the structure of the movie, of the script, and then I sent that first draft to Daniel, and he took it and he wrote some scenes and like came back to me and was like, hey, I want to do a monologue. Would it be cool if in the crazy surgical scene I do a big long monologue? And I was just like, man, go for it. If you want to challenge yourself with that, I am in. So it's sort of both of us just bouncing ideas off of one another of scenes we would want to do, places we want to see these characters go, and sort of in an alternate universe, if we didn't have wives and families and jobs, like what would we be doing if we were like chasing cryptids through the woods?
Oh my God. Now, you went out and you shot some stuff on an improvisational basis, but your visuals are so tight here. I mean, the camera angles they're just wonderful. And the fact that you chose to shoot in black and white. As a director, Josh, talk to me about the decision to shoot in black and white. Obviously, economics comes into play because you don't really have to worry about color correction. But black and white adds so much, especially when we get into that third act and our lovely mad scientist, Mr. Greywood, is performing a lot of bloodletting, shall we say. And that, you come in with ECUs, and it looks so beautiful in a black and white, shades of gray contrast. Black and white fits this film perfectly. So I'm curious, Josh, as a director, what were your considerations how to execute this visually once you had it on the page?
Yeah, so we went out and shot that first sort of improvisational bit and tried some stuff out, and as I was editing some of those scenes together, I sent some of the visuals to Dan, and I was like, hey, this looks okay in color, but if I switch it to black and white, it really feels like the sort of B movie we're going for. It feels like an old Universal monster movie, or even like something harkening back to like the Ed Wood Because essentially we're doing the same thing that Ed Wood was doing in as much as we're just like making something with nothing. We're running and gunning and figuring it out as we go. And so we decided on black and white early on, and then as we filmed more and more, all I ever saw it in was black and white. I transferred my monitor over I turned all of the saturation down on it, so we only actually saw it in black and white, even though we were always filming in color. And the funny thing is, it ended up being almost just as complex a color correction process for me, because when I got into coloring this one versus our first movie, The Good Exorcist, when I colored that one, it was kind of easy to just follow the rules of color correction. This one, I had so much more control over everything. I could go into the blues and I could like saturate them to a massive extreme and make them pop on screen or pull out little details. So I spent a lot of time color correcting and finding like all these little details and finding fun ways to color it properly. But one of the really big things about the black and white that visually was interesting to me, and I think it helps the movie a lot, is I found that I could get away with doing some old school lighting techniques like they did in the 40s and 50s that you just wouldn't be able to get away with now. It would look completely unnatural. But we would do stuff like in those scenes that take place in the night in the woods, we would light like behind the trees, and it would make these trees pop like it was a sound stage. It looks completely unnatural, and there's no reason why there would be a light source coming from behind the trees like that, but in black and white, no one cares. Like, you could get away with that. And it really made it look interesting. The extreme close-ups, I'm really glad you brought that up, because it was really important to me to try to make these characters relate to each other. And I found that the extreme close-ups between, and not even the extreme close-ups, going from like a wide two-shot of Dom and Doug when they're trying to relate to each other and seeing them together, and then cutting to close-ups to like relate to their emotion and their facial expressions, or in their, there's not a whole lot happening in some of Dom's when he's covered in bandages, but like you still are feeling what he's feeling in the close-up when you hear the grunts and groans.
Yeah.
So I really tried to make that sell what they're feeling, because I was afraid that the audience wouldn't be able to connect with such a dramatic change of personality. But I think it helped. I think it helps to like shoot it like that. I'm really happy with the way it all turned out, and I have to give kudos to Dan, because he, when I'm on camera, he had to be behind the camera, kind of mimicking the visuals I was going for throughout the rest of the movie.
Well, something that really stands out to me in terms of the storytelling from a metaphoric standpoint, and it's also because you're so damn tall, Daniel, is I love the dutching of the camera, because until that third act, and really that dinner scene, at all times you're dutching up at Dan as Greywood, which gives that tacit sense of he's in the power position.
Yeah.
And I really love that, because it adds a layer of uncertainty, ambiguity, and downright creepiness as to who this guy really is that picks a weird flower and walks around with it and talks about it being good for blood pressure. Little things like that jump out at me in a film, because that shows a lot of thought, and also because Dan's so damn tall. So you made it work to your advantage. For you, Dan, I'm really curious how you get into the extreme calm mindset of the mad scientist, Doug Greywood, because you have a smile on your face, a pleasant look on your face, and anybody who has a pleasant look that long, it gives me a creepy vibe anyway. But just so even-tempered, even-toned, until we get to that 49-minute mark. But then you revert after one movement, then we revert back to your calm and your explanatory and your quote-unquote mad scientist, scientific Frankensteinian ideals. But this could not have been easy for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we explored when we wrote it in the script. Josh didn't really know what I was going to bring, at least for the initial interaction with Doug Greywood. And so I wanted to try something. I just let him know, I'm like, hey, I'm going to try a few things. And us being from the Midwest, I'm like, what if this guy just comes off as like, one of our weird uncles, someone we all know and can relate to that's just kind of, he means well, but he's just a little off. And so we went for it, and it kind of did the trick. But for me, the catalyst was really the scene where I have Josh's character tied up to the tree.
Mm-hmm.
I laugh as I say that out loud. We ran through that a lot, and we really tried to find like what that tone is. Like, okay, if that's if Dom or Doug at the cabin is one way, what is his the other side of this character?
Mm-hmm.
And so we really sat with it for quite some time, and found like if he stays just stoic and sort of meticulous, but also still trying to relate to Dom and talk to Dom in his terms and in his, the way that he relates to the world, we found that to be the most successful. And then basically kind of married the two at the end, where you see Doug kind of become the kooky uncle again after he's so proud of his handiwork, but now it's just taken on a whole new vibe because you've seen his true intentions. And like I said, like Josh said, it's sort of, we wanted to do that mad scientist sort of 50s throwback, and we just kind of found it as we went.
For you to hold that in character for the entire film is just amazing, Dan. Really amazing. And
Thank you.
It adds so much. I have to commend you guys on what I'm going to call a forested house of horrors. That night scene with Miles stumbling through the forest, that really is. It's a forested house of horrors. How long did it take you guys with the visual effects, makeup? Because I'm guessing a lot of this, even though a lot of it had to be practically done, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Because it just looks spectacular. And we're right there with Miles as he's stumbling, and then he loses his glasses, and he's got to find glasses. And, it's one of my favorite sequences in the film, in all honesty, because it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting because I get that a lot, and my fear was going to be that people, because it is sort of nonsense, even though in the original version of the movie, the first version, we had an explanation as to like why that scene existed. And people have kind of figured out on their own, but I think there's also like a dreaminess and a weirdness to that movie that sort of lends itself to the rest that you don't really need to overthink it either. Mm-hmm. But it was funny, I was just talking about this a little bit ago, and I realized that scene was sort of my answer to, there's a lot of things in this movie that actually kind of play to Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Dreaminess and weirdness, and that scene was sort of, the scene that always scared me the most as a kid was the trees that throw the apples at Dorothy. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, that always creeped me out, and I think that's where this concept sort of came from, was my take on the tree monsters of Wizard of Oz, and there's some other tree monster things that I like. Living Forest has always been something kind of cool to me. But we filmed that whole thing on my birthday in a day, and instead of, I was like, in lieu of bringing me gifts or food or booze, everyone go to the Spirit Halloween and get yourself zombie makeup and dress yourself up like a zombie, and I'm going to film you in the woods.
Wow.
So Strauss made this like bark out of, he like took actual bark and made this rubber latex bark that he put on them, and Strauss was the fly guy in the movie and my assistant director, and he sort of helped me come up with this concept, and then we just filmed it like on the fly on my birthday. We just ran with it, and all evening we filmed this sequence, and then it took me a couple of weeks to edit some visual effects, some CGI into it, and some other stuff, but that was such a blast to get, Daniel's, like, I don't know, how old was he at the time? Like, a year-old son is in that sequence?
Yeah, about a year and a half old.
Yeah, a year and a half old baby grown into the ground, and like we had so much fun filming that. And I think that's the weird thing, is as creepy and weird as that scene is, it's also like oddly fun to look at, so people seem to really enjoy it.
It's hauntingly beautiful. It really is. It's hauntingly beautiful. A real stunner. I actually I went back to watch that portion a second time because I really loved seeing it.
That's great.
You're also editing this, Josh, so I'm curious, were you guys editing this as you were going? Did you wait till you amassed all this footage? What was that process like for you guys?
Yeah, we were editing as I went. I would send scenes to Daniel, and we kind of bounce back and forth. Like we have a very copacetic way of putting stuff together, where I'll send stuff to him, he'll send stuff to me. Nothing is sacred, and we kind of throw out all ideas. And if something isn't working, we're pretty honest with each other about it. And so we edited as we went. We filmed a big chunk of it all at one time. Mm-hmm. But then we filmed stuff like the dinner sequence. We filmed that scene almost like 6 months after we filmed the rest. We actually had submitted it to a film festival and got in. And I was sitting down to watch it, to look for like errors and things like that, and have my wife watch through it with me, so she could see, with fresh eyes, and notice things that maybe I wouldn't notice, like that effect doesn't work, like something's wrong with it or whatever. And I was watching with her, and at the end, she's like, everything looks good. I just don't know if I believe, like, the transition. Like, I don't believe that they're friends like that by the end. So I was like, crap, yeah, you're right. There's a scene missing. So I wrote this scene, sent it to Daniel, and we had 2 weeks, and we wrote that whole scene, filmed it in the basement at Daniel's work, and through this, like, it's my favorite scene of the movie, but it came together, that whole sequence came together in a literal week, so we could get the movie out to the festival.
I have to ask you, Daniel, how much fun was it to play with all of those surgical accoutrements there? You seem to really relish that.
Yeah, no, and we did it in Josh's garage in Minnesota. It was, how cold was it? It was like 40 degrees out?
It was like 10 degrees. It was so cold. It was so cold.
Yeah, watching my best friend squirm in like 10-degree weather, like wearing next to nothing, and I'm just like picking up these tools and like acting over him and waving him around and pontificating about, my long lineage of forefathers who have done crazy experiments. It was a blast.
Well, and I love how for so much of that sequencing, in addition to all of these quote unquote surgical instruments, you actually have it looked like an oscilloscope you had there, not a cardiac monitor, but it looked like an
Nice call, yeah. It's an oscilloscope.
It's an oscilloscope. So you had all of this stuff there that looked really good. You had the blood just cursing, just a beautiful flowing stream of blood coming out of Dom's mouth. I mean, just so lovely in there. But
and thank you. Feels wonderful when the blood oozes into your contact lenses and just sits there and you can continue to film. That was a process. That was a day. Part of that day was I really liked that, even as uncomfortable as it was, because one of the reasons I made this movie as a director, I really wanted to. I don't consider myself an actor in any way, even though I've done it now. I really I like directing far more, but as a director, you sometimes don't know what you're asking of your cast and crew. So, to be able to put myself in these positions in this movie and be like, all right, I'm going to be the one who's, tied up with a dog chain on a tree, it kind of informs something that maybe in the future I will use and understand when I'm asking what I'm asking of people to do.
What I want to know is, why did you let Daniel have all the fun with surgical tools and scalpels and saws and chains and barbed wire? Come on!
Yeah. That was all just this is the epitome of low-budget filmmaking, in as much as we were literally just grabbing tools from in my wife's. That's my wife's studio or my old garage, and so like I took over my wife's art studio, and she let me get my face cut up on her table, and so Daniel was just kind of grabbing things off the wall and being like, okay, now I'm going to saw your face with this. I'm like, okay, I can't see anything, but let's go for it.
I hate to say this, but I think Daniel, he had the better part of this. He's the one that had the most fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think we all agree.
I have to compliment you on your musical choices and the sound mix, but more importantly, the musical choices. A real standout for me is even at the hour 12 mark, which is where we have the dinner sequence, and the music, it gets gothic and with a macabre kind of sound, organ kind of sound to it.
Yeah.
And then throughout, you've got this very, very eclectic renditions
well,
of
really
songs.
Funny you bring that up, because that the dinner sequence scene is actually just a collage of different score from the whole movie. I used all of the score because it's like the end. So I took beats from the whole rest of the movie and put it into that one scene. Every emotion that they felt, I used the emotions from other moments in the movie. So I really like that scene, because it bookends and kind of explains that to the audience, that like this is that scene is the whole movie put together into one scene, all of the emotion. And yeah, Curtis Hager, who did the score, is just like fantastic. And then I just called on friends, and I was like, hey, I need like an acoustic guitar song that's kind of the theme. And my buddy Matthew just sat down with a guitar and did this really fun sort of like thumpy, odd guitar music that's what plays when they're like sort of adventuring in the woods.
Uh-huh.
And then I called friends who are musicians, and I was like, hey, would you be willing to do covers, like a cover of a song that's public domain, so that I could use it in this movie? And so I hunted through public domain and looked for songs that we could re-record, and I had 3 friends record 3 songs with Home on the Range, Get Along Little Doggies, and House of the Rising Sun. And so it was awesome to have people help out like that and actually be a part of this and be excited to be a part of such a weird movie.
And I love the placement, like House of the Rising Sun, where Doug is conducting his initial procedures, shall we say, and pulling teeth. I don't know where you guys found all those teeth, but hopefully yours are still in your mouth, Josh. But to have House of the Rising Sun playing in that sequence, that added another layer of macabre horror to it. I just thought that was really perfectly done. Perfect placement. And throughout this, I could tell you really spent time on the music and the sound mixes here, but particularly on the eclectic nature of the music and then melding it together, because it really buoys what we're seeing on screen.
Yeah, we both, with this movie and then our first film, The Good Exorcist, we knew, our limitations with budget, what we can bring to the screen is limited, but we knew score was like number one, numero uno. Like, you don't skimp on score, because it really carries things like genre films that we do. So, yeah, Curtis, again, a shout out to Curtis Hager. We used him for both movies, and he really understood what we were doing and really elevates both. I
really, really love what you did musically with this one, and the way it is very appropriately cued to what we're seeing and what the characters are feeling. And it's not often that you see that, especially at the indie level. That's something that gets glossed over sometimes. And I'm so happy you guys didn't gloss over it. Big question for you, Daniel. How's Josh as a director?
Well, we'll probably never work again, but we had a good run. No, I mean, it's fantastic. It's a trip. Josh and I have known each other since kindergarten. So, we've been doing, making films since we were kids. And, I told him on the first one, I felt like I was a proud wife to see him actually go out there and do it and like accomplish his vision, and got to see him really elevate his craft. And yeah, I will definitely keep working with him, I suppose. But yeah, I think he's fantastic. He knows what he wants, and as you've mentioned, he really has an eye for behind that lens and what he wants to capture, and how to keep the camera moving, and how to keep everything visually exciting. And I can speak for myself. I was learning just as much, being there with him, and every time he's on camera, I'm behind camera or someone else is. So it's kind of like a film school, and it's just been great. Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head there, Daniel, talking about Josh. He is definitely a visualist as a director.
Yeah.
Josh, you're very, very visually in tune with storytelling. And that really shows here. Curious for you guys, how precious were you with the words on the page? Once you got into shooting, and with a lot of this really twisted and weird stuff, how precious were you with the words on the page? Or did you allow yourselves and Keith to go off on an ad-lib tangent?
Yeah, there's a lot of improv. We had quite a few moments, and I'm never precious with it. I want to tell the best story I can and portray the characters the best way I can. So I definitely was open to ideas and let everyone run with it however they wanted.
Yeah, we definitely approached it, I think, more so just emotionally. If we knew that something had to have some sort of emotional impact, that's kind of what we were going for over like the actual phrasing or the words or, anything like that.
Now, one last question for you guys. You guys are so much fun. You guys are so much fun.
Well.
I'm sick and twisted like the two of you. But I'm for each of you, I'm really curious. What did you each learn about yourself as a filmmaker and storyteller in the process of making GREYWOOD'S Plot?
I'll start. I definitely learned that I want to keep doing this, even though I have come to the realization of how challenging it is. There's definitely a metaphor hidden in there about how I feel about art and how much I feel like you have to put into it to actually succeed. Maybe isn't the right word, but you have to kind of become the monster to be an artist. And there are positives and negatives, but it definitely taught me, like, okay, I'm up for the challenge and I want to keep going.
And what about for you?
Oh, boy. I agree with that as sentiment. We kind of fell into feature filmmaking ass backwards in a way. And it's just something we've gravitated towards, and, we've learned that this is something we like doing. We like writing together. We like collaborating and really pushing ourselves, creatively. And this has just been an amazing outlet for that. And yeah, I think if anything, it's for as long as the movie has been around and then finally getting to this finish line of a release, like, we realize there's nothing we'd rather be doing.
Well, and I would be remiss not to mention to both of you about the dream sequences, especially the ones created for the character of Miles, and of course, Killer Hobos. I was laughing my ass off. These animated sequences are so great, and it just fits. It really fits with the unconscious mindset of Miles and Dom.
Totally.
But I love Killer Hobos.
We appreciate it. Sometimes you never know what the response is going to be, but...
Might we see a Killer Hobos animated short series or something?
Ooh, I'm in.
That's a great question.
That's a great question. I don't know, but you might have inspired me.
We'll get Keith back to narrate.
I mean,
we got to get Keith back to narrate.
I think that would just be such a fun short animated series. If Disney can do all of these 5 to 9 minute shorts and package them up for Groot and Baymax, I don't see why you can't do this for killer hobos. There are lots of different kinds of hobos out there.
I mean, he's our Groot.
That's
He's
it.
our Groot.
That's it. And of course, the killer hobo sequence, it's very prescient for what we later see unfold.
Right.
And how you've animated it. Guys, I love this film. I so love this film.
So much.
Now, what are you guys working on anything else now?
Yeah, we've got a couple of projects in the works. I'm working on a feature that I'm trying to finish editing right now that I filmed during the pandemic. And then I actually just finished up the first draft of our take on a slasher film. So we've got stuff in the pipeline. We're definitely excited about the future.
Well, you were slashing already in this one, so I can't wait to see what you're doing with a full-on slasher.
Yep. It's pretty wild, yeah.
And what about for the other half of this dynamic duo? What are you up to?
Well, yeah, I'm currently working on the second draft of that script. Yeah, as we speak or after we speak, he's editing Josh is editing Scumbag, which is a solo film he did during the pandemic. He acts, stars, scores, literally the only person in the film. And while he's doing that, I'm working on the second draft of a slasher tentatively titled Band-Aid Face. It's probably going to have to change due to the legal reasons, but we're calling it Band-Aid Face for now. And yeah, we hope to start shooting that this winter. So.
Okay, anything that is called Band-Aid Face, even in the preliminary stages, I'm there for that. I'm there for...
I was hoping so.
But I'm in. Band-Aid Face movie, I am in.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wonderful.
Guys, thank you so much. I hope we get to do this again in the future.
Yeah, sure. Likewise. Loved it.
Please keep me in the loop on what's going on with Scumbag, with Band-Aid Face. I really want to see what you guys are doing in the future because I think you're great filmmakers, great storytellers.
Thank you.
Oh,
We appreciate that.
guys, thank you, and you have a great week.
Yes. Yeah, you as well.
All right, we'll talk sooner rather than later, I hope.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I hope so.
Okay, guys, bye-bye.
Bye.